This week I'm joined by Kat Ward from Canadian Research Supernatural Society. Hi, Kat.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm great, thank you. So tell me, firstly, about your podcast.
Podcast is called Paranormal Heart Podcast. It gets released on the second and last Sunday of every month. It's been going for about 5 years, and I'm so excited that my 100th episode will be coming out April 30th. I can't believe that it's 100 episodes already. It first started out with a monthly podcast, and people were asking for more content, so they wanted weekly, and it's like, well, I don't know if I can do weekly, so I thought I'll start off with twice a month. So it seems to work better to like the second Sunday and the last Sunday. Sometimes there's an extra Sunday. You know, it's not exactly every 2 weeks, depending on how many Sundays there are in a month. But yeah, so I talk to people such as yourself about various paranormal topics. I just had a lady, she was talking about tarot cards. I had a listener from the UK asked me because he's getting into tarot reading. So he asked if I could have an episode on that. And Lisa Morrison was, she was amazing. So yeah, she talked about everything tarot, the history and everything. So, but yeah, we cover ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, you know, anything weird.
So tell me about the team then.
The team, we've been together, I want to say 7 or 8 years. We first started out as, I think there was like 8 of us on the team. And then throughout the years, it just got, you know, life gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah.
And so now we're down to 4, and I've taken a step back. So now it's down to 3. But I do plan on joining the team again. It's just so busy, you know, with work, the podcast, just finished narrating an audiobook. And I just couldn't commit to the team as much as I'd like to and as much as they'd like to. So I told the girls that I would just step back for now until things settle down a little bit. Because there's nothing worse than saying, yes, I'll be there for the investigation, and something happens and you're just too tired from working or whatever, and you can't give your best when you're on investigating like that. So it's, you know, or you're not feeling well or whatever. So I didn't want to let down the team. So I just said, ladies, I'm going to take a little break for now until things settle down. So I'm hoping to be back soon.
So you're obviously interested in the paranormal, but what started that interest?
It's something I've always been interested in. Oh, first of all, I want to say that the team is located in the Ottawa Valley in Ontario, Canada. For those of you who aren't familiar with the team, the paranormal is something that's always been fascinating to me. I think my very first paranormal experience was, I'm not sure, I think I was about the age of 5 years old. So I grew up on the east coast of Canada in a province called New Brunswick, in a little town called Dieppe. We lived on the top floor of a 3-story apartment building. Now, this apartment building was really, really old and creepy. It used to be heated by coal furnace in the basement. Eventually, they transitioned to electric heat, but the person on the first floor had control of the thermostat. So if we were cold, they were overheating, you know.
Yeah.
But it was such a really old build, no elevator, just stairs. And I have no siblings. So I had my bedroom all by myself. It was a big bedroom, big walk-in closet. And I had encountered the Hat Man. But he was about 4 feet tall. He wasn't the tall one like everyone talks about. And I don't remember how often I would see him, but he showed up frequent enough that I just, even as an adult, I just always wondered, what was he? Who was he? Why was he there? My father still says he remembers my having night terrors, screaming, the man in the closet, the man in the closet. He wouldn't really pay too much attention to me, thank God. But I remember every time he made an appearance, he'd just be walking around my room, and I'd have the covers, you know, it's like, please don't see me, please don't see me. Yeah, and there was one day, my father, he kind of had enough of me screaming in the middle of the night. So he brought me into the walk-in closet when it was daytime, and he says, see, kiddo, there's nothing here in the daytime that isn't here at the nighttime. Well, that kind of backfired on him. I looked at him with big eyes, and I said, you mean he's here in the daytime too? And he's just like, he's trying to reassure me that everything's fine. So I was afraid of my bedroom during the daytime for the longest time as well.
Yeah.
When we moved from the apartment building, I hadn't seen him again. Didn't really talk much about it. Started listening to podcasts in my adult life, lots of paranormal podcasts. And I was listening to this one show called Paratruth Radio. And they had someone on there talking about the Hat Man. And I thought, oh my, I hadn't heard of the Hat Man before. And it was amazing because I thought somebody else is having this experience. It wasn't just me. So I thought someone else has seen this Hat Man. But the thing was, their description was very tall. Mine was short. So after I listened to the episode, I reached out to one of the hosts and said, I've had this experience as well, but it was a shorter version. Have you ever heard of the short Hat Man? So he sent me this link on YouTube video. This man had recreated the Hat Man that he had seen when he was a little boy, and it was a shorter version as well. And as soon as I saw that, all this childhood emotions came flooding back. I was terrified for a split second. I thought, oh my, it looked exactly like what I had seen. And I thought, how is that possible? And that's when I started realizing that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, people are having the same experiences. And that in itself is fascinating because there has to be something behind the paranormal if there's so many people having the same experiences. Now, I reached out to this gentleman, but this was years ago, and I don't think he's on Facebook because he's never replied. Tried to find his email address, wanted to find out more information, but I never did. But that was my first encounter, but it really fascinated me. And growing up on the east coast of Canada in a very Catholic family, very religious family, thankfully my father didn't believe in the paranormal. My mother did. She was extremely religious. We went to church every weekend, and she had her prayer bead. But it also runs in the family where, like my mother, she was able to speak with her grandfather without actually speaking. He didn't even have to be in the same building. It was just a telepathic connection that they had. So my mother and my father, although he didn't believe, he was very supportive. They both were. They didn't try to say you were crazy. Let's try and figure out what's going on. So like my father trying to tell me that nothing's there, in the daytime. He's just trying to reassure me. He's trying to help me out. He's trying to figure out what's going on at the same time. So throughout my life, I've always been somewhat of a sensitive. I don't like to say psychic. It's more sensitive. I can feel things. And, we'd go to old heritage museums, where you'd have buildings from the 1800s or whatever, and I could sense certain things. And I don't know, just growing up, it was always fascination. And the kids used to call me the creepy girl who likes ghosts. Well, I'm still the creepy girl that likes ghosts. But it seems to be a little bit more accepted now. Not by everyone, but because of all these TV shows that have come out over the years, thankfully, it's a little bit more mainstream, and people don't look at you like you have three heads anymore. It's almost like, like I said earlier, where people are having the same experiences where before it wasn't really discussed. Because, I don't know, it could have been because they were afraid or they thought they were crazy and didn't want others to think that they were crazy. But now, with shows like yours and mine and so many others out there, it shows people that they're not alone. There's other people having the same experiences as they are. And it's almost therapeutic in a way, because I've noticed as a paranormal investigator, some of these family members are having kind of like PTSD, because one family member would be having an encounter and the other one's not, and they don't really believe them. They want to support them, but they just think that they've gone off the deep end, and it does cause lots of stress. So when you're able to go in and talk to these people and say, yeah, you're not alone, we're going to believe you, we're going to try and figure out what's going on, it's really nice to see that more people are opening up now.
Everything seems to fall under the banner of mental illness these days. Everyone's on the spectrum. Everyone's this, that, and the other. And yeah, is that a detriment to our business? Like you say, more and more people are coming out and saying, oh, well, we've seen something. You see all these shows like ours or on TV, and just millions of people are witnessing spirits. And then the other half are just blanked off to it. But, as much as more people are witnessing it, more people are saying, yeah, well, you've probably got something wrong with you.
When we do an investigation, we do go in to do like a preliminary interview. And we try to find out what's going on, how long has it been going on, who's being affected. And we also have to ask the hard questions. Are you on any medications? Do you have any mental disorders? They're very tough questions to ask, but it's something that we have to ask because you never know. It could be someone that's not on the proper medication or whatever, and they're actually seeing something. But that being said, when they're off the medication, maybe they really are seeing things, and the medication suppresses it. So it's a very interesting topic when you can talk about psychology and the paranormal. It's just sometimes I think it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, we had a client who admitted straight out, look, I have been sectioned. I do have mental health issues. And so we were thought, well, you brought it up. And then she was doing some quite out there things around the house to get away from a demon. And yet, when we actually investigated, we were taken aback. There was a thing that called itself the Ram, claimed to be an elemental. And we were like, maybe she's got a point here, you know.
Yeah.
Preying on the vulnerable, I guess, playing on the, you know, the weaker. It made sense in a way.
Not necessarily the weaker as well, but I also believe that if someone is truly sensitive, if they have any psychic ability at all, a lot of times these entities are able to see that in the individual, and then they realize, oh, they can hear me, they can see me, let's try and communicate. And then people would just think, this is psychotic, I'm not seeing this. So yes, it could be a weaker minded individual, but there could also be generally a psychic.
All I mean by weaker is depression, a lower, you know, a lower energy.
Gotcha. Yes. Yeah. The vibrations are different.
Yeah. So what is your approach to ghost hunting?
So how do we conduct an investigation?
Yeah. I mean, I do Ouija boards primarily, but what's your main? Describe you going to investigate my house, for example.
Okay, so we would do, like I mentioned earlier, we do a preliminary interview. Not all of us will attend. Personally, I like to go in blind and I don't want to know too much of what's going on because I like to use my senses as well, my abilities to sense out what's going on. But we will discuss with the client what's been happening, how long has it been happening, is there a specific time, anything change in your life. You know, we have a list of questions that we ask and we write it all down, and then we decide when we're going to be going in. Sometimes we conduct the investigation the same night, but usually it's just the preliminary interview, and then we go in with our equipment, and sometimes the client will stay and sometimes they don't want to stay, so they'll just give us free reign of their house or business, because we have done businesses as well. And we explain to them what the equipment is. So we have digital cameras to record everything, obviously, voice recorders, I can't even remember, it's been so long, spirit boxes, you know, the usual pieces of equipment that most paranormal investigators have. And when we set up, then we do a sweep of the area, usually with an EMF detector, to see where the hot spots are. So like microwaves, fridges, your internet box, you know, your modem, that really makes it light up like a Christmas tree. So we want to find out where the hot spots are in the location that we're investigating. So then we can say, okay, there's a base reading here. And then we go through the building, asking questions, usually, you know, like usual. But just because there's a location that we noticed was a hot spot, like let's say there's a microwave that was making the EMF detector light up, doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to have true paranormal activity there. I find it fascinating when you ask a question and you get a response, like, especially if you say, could you light it up a specific amount of times? If you could light it, because there's a lot of them have like the different color. Can you light it up to green? And it lights it up to green at the moment that you asked. To me, that can't be coincidence, you know. I also have, my father is heavily into electronics. So he has, it's called a wire finder. So you can, because a lot of times we wonder what's behind this wall, what's underneath this floor, what wires are under there that could, you know, live wires. you can't really ask the guest, can we put a hole in your wall to see what's there? So my father sent me this wire detector, and you can put it in that location and say, oh, okay, there's wires there. That's probably why the EMF detector is lighting up, and not when we're specifically asking questions. It's just, you know, you can kind of weed that out, rule it out. So it's not just the usual pieces of equipment that we have. A lot of times, our lead investigator is extremely psychic. We all have abilities, so we all kind of we work very well together. We have one team member. She smells things. You know, she'll smell a perfume or a cigar or something where no one else will smell it. So it's really nice to have people with different abilities. And to me, that is probably one of the best pieces of equipment is yourself.
Absolutely.
But we need the equipment to be able to validate what you just felt. If you just felt, say, a hand on your shoulder or something, and you hear through the spirit box, for example, something that correlates with you being touched, it just validates what you just felt, you know, or smelled or heard or whatever. So yeah, so at the end, once we decide if we believe that there are entities in the building, we then tell the client, this is what we've found. How would you like us to proceed? And a lot of times, if it's grandma, you know, and we tell them it's your grandmother, then because we tell them a specific name, and then they'll be like, oh my, that's my grandmother. A lot of times people will say, oh, she's harmless, leave her here. We will do cleansings if the client wants us to. So that gives them a peace of mind as well. So if they want us to cleanse the negative energies, but leave grandma, we're going to do that. Sage, we have holy water, but some people say, I don't even want grandma here. I don't care. You know, grandma should not be here. We said our piece when she passed, you know, get rid of her. We will. And we usually touch base with them a few weeks later just to see how things are going with the client. And every once in a while, they'll say the activity started again, not as intense. And then we'll tell them how to proceed. We'll say, do you want us to go in and sage and cleanse the place again? Sometimes they say yes, so we'll do that. But we also tell the client that they have power as well. I had this one lady, she had, I think it was 4 children. The children were being traumatized, like they didn't like what was going on. But the mother, when we showed up, they were treating us like we were their very personal ghost paranormal show. And they had their friends there, they were drinking beer, and they wanted to be part of it. And we're like, no, you can't. And they're like, can we watch through the windows? Like, no, you're going to contaminate our evidence. So we had to put garbage bags over the windows to make sure that we didn't see anybody walk by, and we potentially think, oh, we just saw a shadow walk by, you know. The mother thought this was all fascinating, and because she had another paranormal investigative team go in. They got rid of it, came back stronger than ever, and it's because deep down inside she thought it was really cool. It was like on the TV show. So she was kind of willing the entities back. So we had to tell her, you need to, I actually told her, I said, you have to say, you're not welcome here. We don't want you here. This is my home now. You're not welcome. You need to leave. So in a little mousy voice, she said, you're not welcome. You need to leave. Then I said, no, honey, your babies are being traumatized. You need to use your mom voice. So she smiled, and she's like, once she realized that it was affecting her babies, and we're like, you need to, it has to come from you because you're the one who lives here. We can come in and cleanse, but, you know, if you're still willing it to come in, we can come back, you know, weekly, and it won't do anything. So she finally realized that she needs to do this for her children. So she finally said, you know, and at one point she's just screaming, this is my house, this is my family, you know, and she's the authority behind her voice. And once we touched back, she said it hadn't returned, so that was good. Once somebody realizes that they have the power, don't doubt yourself. Like, we're meant to get rid of these things, and once people realize that, then it's fine.
What are some of the memorable moments then from over your time investigating?
Probably the very first investigation that I did with the team. It was very, very exciting for me and for the team as well. So One of the team members knew this older gentleman. He was 94 at the time, and he was having paranormal activity in his home. So he asked the team to come in and investigate. So we needed to cut our teeth somehow. So we thought, yeah, great. So our first investigation. So we go to his house, and he has this little walker, and we made him an honorary member as well. He was such a kind, sweet gentleman. So he would have like the EMF detector on his little walker, and he would follow us in his around the house. He was having fun too. So myself and our lead investigator, Katie, we were in the main bedroom, and to the right of the bedroom was one of the guest bedrooms. That's where the rest of the team members were. So Katie and I were asking questions, the usual questions. Can you knock? We heard a knock. So we looked at each other and we're like, okay, well, maybe it's a coincidence. Could you knock 3 times or however many times? We gave a specific number. We got the exact number of knocks. So I thought, okay, it's probably the teammates in the other room messing with us, right? So we asked again for another specific amount of specific amount of knocks again. Realized that it was coming from the other end of the bedroom. The teammates were the complete opposite side. So we were ecstatic that we would ask more than once for a specific amount of knocks, and we got those, like the numbers that we asked for. And it wasn't even the teammates, because it was the opposite end of the building. So then we knew it wasn't them messing around. We were giddy, almost like children in a candy shop, because when you ask for a specific amount and you get it right after you ask the question, that was, for me, the most exciting investigation we've ever done, because my first investigation, and we're getting something.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, they do stay with you. They stand out, don't they?
Especially they do, yeah.
When you do investigations and you're always asking the same things, and generally speaking, you're not getting it on demand, or you're not getting it at all. So yeah, that is how it goes. How do you approach safety then, like spiritual safety? Do you consider
that? We say a prayer. Katie usually says a protection prayer for us before we go in. We sage as well, and I like to. I think all of us use crystals, but I like to have crystals on me. My favorite ones are selenite. I like to have 3 little rods, 3 for whatever reason. I put them in my pocket, and I also like to have hematite for grounding. And if I have it, I also like to have a piece of amber. I used to have a pair of amber earrings that I would wear. Those are the 3 that I would always wear, and I felt that would protect me. And my mother, she's passed away now for several years now, and she was very, very French Roman Catholic. She was, like I mentioned earlier, prayers all the time. And I had her crucifix, so I wear that, and I feel like my mother's protecting me as well, keeping things away.
If you were in a room on your own, how would you communicate? Would you use a meter? Do you just speak out?
It depends. Sometimes we've all used different pieces of equipment. It's not like I'm specifically going to be the EMF or somebody else is going to be specifically the ghost box, because I find sometimes I could get lots of hits on a ghost box, and then the next investigation, I get nothing, but somebody else does. So we kind of play around to see what's going to be working. But if I'm in the room by myself, I'm going to see what piece of equipment is working for me at that moment. And I'll just say, hello, my name's Kat. We're here to speak with you and find out if you have any messages. Tell us your stories. We're not here to harm you. We'll also go in and explain the pieces of equipment that we have, because I have a FLIR. And there was one time on the spirit box, it came out, she, gun. And then we were wondering, guns? Like, oh, the FLIR is shaped like a gun. And we don't know how old these spirits are. So we like to try and explain what the pieces of equipment that we are, like what they're doing. It's not there to harm them. And if you tell them that you have an EMF detector, they might not understand what it is. So we just say a box with the lights on it. So if you could come and activate the box, it'll have like different colors like red, yellow, and green. Could you first of all, show us that you're here by lighting up a color. Once that works, then we ask for a specific color. And sometimes you don't get it, sometimes you do. And it's just, again, so fascinating when you ask for a specific color, like earlier when I mentioned about the amount of knocks, when you ask for a specific color and that happens, that's so intriguing.
We've been doing a lone Ouija board session at home, and that was it. The spirit said, box of eyes, talking about my phone live streaming. And we were like, oh, so you understand that people are watching.
Amazing.
How do you handle skeptics then, people who try and berate you?
In the beginning, it used to bother me because I used to think, how can he not believe? Because most of the time when you're speaking with a skeptic, eventually they'll say, but there was this one time. But it used to bother me. But now it's like, I know what I've seen. I know what I've experienced. I'm not trying to convince you. So to me, if you're a skeptic, that's great. Let's have a calm adult discussion without yelling or anything like that. It's like, well, tell me why you're a skeptic. Are you sure you've never had any activities in your life that you've just dismissed? But yeah, I used to try and convince people, but now I'm just like, if you don't believe, you don't believe. That's fine. But I know what I've experienced and you weren't there.
In the beginning, I was terribly self-conscious about people saying, you're doing what? You ghost hunting? Because I had no ammo of my own. And I thought it was crazy, But yeah, over the last years, I think, no, I have plenty to make me believe what I believe now.
Yeah, I was, in the beginning, I didn't tell very many people until they really got to know me that I was an investigator and paranormal podcaster, because people would be like, excuse me, you do what? And then I was afraid they wouldn't want to talk to me anymore. Now I don't introduce myself to people as, hi, I'm Kat Ward, I'm a paranormal investigator. Unless it fits into the conversation, if they say, oh, so what do you do? I'll tell them what I do for my paying job. And if they ask, what are your hobbies, then I mention it. And a lot of times people still kind of like, you do what? But then you can see the fascination in their eyes too. And then they ask you more questions.
Have you ever had anything happen to you that you couldn't explain?
Oh, that's a good one. I guess in a way, top of my head, looking for my car keys.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have had this happen, or not just car keys. It could be anything that I'm looking for. And I'm like, I just put it right there. And then I've learned over the years to actually say, okay, haha, funny, joke's on you, joke's on me. I really need this item. Could you put it back? And then you turn around and it's there. I can't explain how that works. Like, was I just that oblivious that I didn't see it at that moment? And all of a sudden it's there and it was there all along? Or did something or someone actually put it there? So that is a big one. That how do you explain that?
It's great to hear that you also have had those experiences. Yeah, I've had items go missing and turn up. And how many times do you look in the same place that you think it is? More than once, isn't it?
Yes.
But it's there. It should be there, but it's not. And you go away and you come back, but it was there. And then it's there.
Yeah. My family, sometimes I'll say, did you see, I don't know, my phone? Because I'm always misplacing my phone. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's other entities moving it. No, anyway, so I say, did anybody see my phone? And my family are like, where was the last time you saw it? I said, I just had it right here on the kitchen counter, for example. And they all look and like, no. And then I'll say, okay, please put my phone back. And all of a sudden I'll hear, Mom, are you kidding? There it is right there. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, it was there all the time. Like, you guys just put it there. Somebody must have hidden it, but they're adamant. And you can usually tell when your children are lying. And it's just, it's so fascinating. So whenever people tell me, I can't find something, I'll just say, well, it's going to sound crazy and you might feel silly in the beginning, but just out loud say, it's not funny. I really need this item. Could you please put it back? And most of the time people will say, oh my God, it worked. I have no idea why.
Yeah. Have you ever met or had negative sort of energies, moody, angry?
Yeah, I've met all kinds of people that have negative energy, and I've always been so fortunate that negative people don't stay around me very for too long, even when I was younger, because I learned at a very young age to push negativity, like push the negative energies away from me. I just envisioned white light from within me pushing out, and people just don't generally stay around. A couple of years ago, we adopted this dog from Turkey. She was a great little dog. We still have, just behind me here. You might hear her at some point. We had her for, she's 2 now. So when we first got her, she was a year old. So yeah, we've had her for a year. Great little dog, loving, And one day, I think we had her for maybe 2 weeks. And my daughter calls me on the phone and says, Mom, Willow's really acting strangely. She's barking, she's growling. She doesn't seem like herself at all. So I couldn't go home, and I contacted the company, the organization that we adopted her from. At the time, they're called Monty's Mutts. I can't remember. They've changed their name since. But anyways, contacted the individual. He could, and I said, you need to call my daughter. I can't talk right now, but here's a number. So he calls her, and he could hear her. They've had her for a few months, rehabilitating her, trying to get her to be used to having people around. He said she was such a loving dog, and he could hear her in the background barking and snarling. And he's like, that's not the dog that we've had. That's not the dog we know. So he said he's tried to tell her things that you could do to try and, show that you're the alpha type thing.
Yeah.
So after she spoke with him, I spoke with my daughter, and I said, okay, he's supposed to call us back tomorrow, apparently. She said, so I said, well, in the meantime, take some sage, cleanse the house. I can't do it right now because I'm not home. You need to do it. She cleansed it, and she says it was a whole new different dog afterwards. So I firmly believe something was coming through her at that time. So it's not just people that can have the negative energies. It can also be your animals. And we haven't had that incident since, thankfully. But yeah, we did some cleansing, and she was back to her normal self.
Do you have any advice for people who are watching us and just starting out thinking, I'm going to be an investigator?
If you decide to join a team, research the team, ask around through social media, people you might know, because like you and I both know, there's so many teams out there that are not legitimate. They want to take your money, not to say that people who charge are not legit. The majority of us don't charge. We might ask for gas money or some for coffee or snacks, but we will not charge you for the most part. But do your research. If you think that you're in over your head with something, we have, over the years, there's been lots of negativity in the paranormal community. Lots of people saying, what you've captured is rubbish, mine is legit, and then they just trash talk you. But there seems to be a lot of people now. We have that paranormal unity now. So reach out to individuals. Ask if you can go with another team and just kind of do pardon the pun, if you can shadow them, watch to see how they investigate. Don't just go according to what the television shows are telling you, because yes, they are investigating like most of us do, but they also have a business. They have a television show. They're trying to get the ratings. So they're not going to be totally 100%. It's good to get a little bit of information from them. But like I said, reach out to a team and see if you can just follow them for a few investigations and see how it's done. Do research on equipment and try to have fun too, because I find if you're having fun, your vibrations are totally different and you're going to have a better experience and you're not going to necessarily have anything negative. So far, that's worked for us. I don't know about other teams, but it has worked for us. We do get scared. We'll ask for, give us a knock, and then we get it, and then we just kind of go, ah, and then we apologize. It's like, I'm sorry, we did ask you to knock, and it startled us. Our apologies, but thank you very much. Be respectful. Don't antagonize. Don't attack the entity that you're trying to communicate. But yeah, that's about it.
So with your podcast recordings, you're thinking about spirits a lot. with, memories of investigating or when you were investigating. Have you had spirits in the home because you've opened yourself up?
Actually, no. But with that being said, I recently had a gentleman from the UK, Mike Gale, and he told me that he could, because he's also a psychic, he saw two entities behind me, two spirits. And there's one in particular, he said, over my right shoulder. As soon as he mentioned that, our carbon monoxide detector went off in the house. And at first I'm thinking, oh my, why is the smoke detector going off? Is somebody cooking? So I opened up the door and no, why is it going off? We realized it was the carbon monoxide. So my husband and daughter are sorting it out to make sure that we don't need to evacuate the house. No one felt, because carbon monoxide, you got to have headaches. You got to get sleepy. Nobody had any effects like that. So what we did was we took the batteries out. We had another one downstairs. We brought it upstairs to see if that one would go off, and it didn't. So we thought, okay, maybe it's just a faulty one. But it went off for quite a few minutes, and we thought, okay, at the moment that Mike mentioned that he saw spirits, the carbon monoxide detector goes off. And I thought, I was kind of excited once I realized that we were safe and we didn't have to evacuate the house. But I thought, that's never happened. I never get anything happening during my podcast. I hear other people all the time say, oh, yes, strange things happen all the time, but it doesn't seem to happen with me, or I don't notice it.
I just want to tell you a quick story. With
Please.
Our Ouija board sessions at home, I tell my family that there's a code word, and it's out there now. It was dragon, okay? And I knew that would never come up on the Ouija board in a normal day. And my gran died at Christmas knowing the password. And then just at the weekend, dragon got spelt out. And nobody else in my team knew the word. And I'm like, yeah, who's this? And it was Gran. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty miraculous. Now I'm just plagued with the worry that I somehow did it. Because when I took my finger off, my teammate says, how old were you when you died? It gave the wrong age. And it's like, I know that spirits can answer our questions before we finished asking them. So what do you think about that? Do you think there's any validity to it or not?
Oh, that's hard to say. It could have come from you, since you were touching it and you were thinking the word, and that's the word that came out. But at first I thought definitely has to be your grandfather, you had said?
Grandma.
Oh, grandmother. Yeah. But then it gave the wrong age. But they also say that when we cross over, we might not know what year it is or how old we are. So maybe she perceived herself as being that age. I don't know.
I guess we'll see, because it even gave her name later on, and other spirits were saying, your gran's here and told me to keep away, but I refused. So there's all sorts going on there.
Also, it was another spirit answering you.
Yeah, later on, bit of an argumentative one. Oh. And he said, oh, your gran told me to keep away, but I don't listen.
Okay.
Let's see what happens. It's only the second time we've done a Ouija board in my house. It made sense that I would get family spirits around in more of a protective role. But yeah, we'll see what transpires with that. So future projects for the podcast or for your life, what's going on?
As I mentioned earlier, my 100th episode will be released April 30th. I'm pretty excited about that. I don't want to say who the guests are going to be yet, although we do have a date and time to record. You never know what could happen, and I might have somebody completely different. Someone might have to cancel, but I'm going to have two guests this time. I usually have the one, but I'm going to have two. Yeah, so that's happening. So I'm moving on with the podcast. I'm working on book 2 of narrating the book. I'm helping the author edit her book, first of all, because there's a few errors there. So once that is completed, I'm going to be narrating the second book in the series. I'm pretty excited by that, and hopefully get back into the saddle of investigating again.
Oh, brilliant. Well, Kat, lovely to know you, lovely to listen to you and have you on, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.